welcome to this beautiful Monday night at the United Public Radio Network in New Orleans, in Louisiana, at 107.7 FM. Beautiful Monday night. Hold on. At the I'm so bad. And the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast. We are on Facebook, we're on Roku, we're on Rumble, and we are on YouTube. I want to thank our sponsor, Carnation. We love you very much. You have been with us now almost 2 straight full years, and we love you. Thank you. All right. We have a really good show tonight. I am excited about this one, and I'm just going to go. Preston?
Thank you, Dolly.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for, what is it, episode 154 of The Light Gate. I'm your host, Preston Dennett, author, researcher, and of course, my lovely co-host, is Dolly Safran, a major contactee, subject of my book, Symmetry. We want to give a huge thanks to Michael Markley, who wrote that amazing intro you just heard. We really love it. We got some great feedback, so let us know what you guys think. Also got a fun little announcement. Dolly and I both got new chairs. So we can actually sit up. Thanks to you guys, we were able to use the donations you've provided to get those. So that helps us a lot because we're getting old and God knows I don't have a perfect back, but feels much better. So thank you guys. All the support you give really helps a lot, and we use it definitely to help make this show better. So we had Luigi Venditelli. Am I saying that right? Venditelli. Oh my gosh, Venditelli. Last week, talking about S4. That was a fun show. We've got more great shows lined up. We have an awesome guest tonight. And before I introduce him, let me just say a very quick hello to you folks, because it's because of you we do this show. Just going to spend a minute doing this, so I'm going to go fast. We have Johnny J2B. Beautiful day. Yes, it is. I love spring. We have AM 8370 and Scarlet Fire. Love seeing these familiar faces. Hello, Howie Odell. Tips Top Hat. I love it. Daniel Nardine from the Cumberland Plateau, Mountain Dan. Very cool.
Nice.
Cherie's also from Tennessee.
There's Cherie's.
Hope you're doing well. Louise from New Jersey. We love you. Namaste of endless love and generosity. Couldn't do it without you. Much thanks.
Thank you so much.
We have the Owl Man.
Hello,
Man. We have a nice crowd already. Aurora Comedy Vids. Thanks for joining us. Stargazer and Teresa Levine. Perennial Philosophy. I just love it. We are reaching all the way to Australia.
Good night.
You two are. Hope you're doing well. We got Dr. Nils Rasmussen.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Becky Sloan.
Hello.
Texas Cacti. I'm guessing from Texas. We got Patsy.
Hi, Patsy.
Esme. And Eric Red and Little Dove and OG Gook and Michael Kennedy. We love you very much. Mm-hmm. Poetic Poems. I think I better get started.
Yes.
Searching Girl. We got a nice little crowd. You guys, thanks so much. Foggy Notions.
Hi, Foggy.
Kira Jade. Susan Alloway. Susan.
Hey, Susan.
Guest on the show.
Long time to see. Yeah.
Nice to see you here, SB Harkin. So let's get going, because I'm very excited about our guest. We ran into him, Dolly and I, when doing UFO MegaCon
2021.
2022, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm the one with the eidetic memory, yes.
And his table was right next to ours, so we really got to chat, and that's all kinds of fun. Our guest tonight is, of course, Mike Ricksecker. Let me put this up on the banner so you can get a little peek at our guest tonight. And let me just tell you a little bit about him from his bio. He is the author of the award-winning Travels Through Time and Amazon bestsellers, Portals to the Stars, A Walk in the Shadows, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. I want to talk about that, as well as several historic paranormal books. He has appeared on multiple television shows and programs, including History Channel's Ancient Aliens, the unexplained, and the unbelievable. Travel Channel's The Alaska Triangle. That was a good show. That was a really good show. Animal Planet's The Haunted, multiple series on Gaia TV. How about that, Dolly?
Wow.
He is the
Nice.
producer and director of the docuseries The Shadow Dimension, available on several streaming platforms, and produces additional full-length content on ancient wisdom, lost civilizations, UFOs, and the supernatural on his extensive YouTube channel. Look at the links in the show notes. We have links to all of this stuff. Mike currently hosts the Connecting the Universe interactive class on his online learning platform, the Connecting Universe portal, and for more than 9 years has hosted the Edge of the Rabbit Hole live stream show. He operates his own book publishing and video production company, Haunted Road Media, representing a number of authors and winning the award for Excellent Media in the Paranormal Field at the 2019 Shockfest Film Festival. Wow, multiple awards. That's very cool. He also hosts the annual Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, an exploration of Egypt's pyramids and temples for lost advanced technologies, the secrets of esoteric alchemy and ancient stargates. We're going to have a lot to talk about tonight. He's a native of Cleveland, Ohio, a U.S. Air Force veteran with a background in intelligence and a degree in computer simulations programming. Wow, Mike, I'm amazed. He's been researching unexplained phenomena across the world for over 30 years. And without further ado, let's bring on Mike.
Hello, Mike. Rick.
Hey, Preston and Dolly, how you doing?
Oh,
Thanks
Mike.
for having me.
Sorry, lost my mind today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for doing this. It was awesome to meet you at UFO MegaCon.
Yeah, I have to settle the debate between you two. So
Okay.
Dolly's actually correct. It was 2021 because it was right before I went to Egypt that year, and I did not go in 2022.
Yep.
All right. Well, she was right. I capitulate.
That's all right. So yeah, about
I
5
can't tell
years.
time anymore.
It's all good. No, it's just wonderful that we got to meet each other, and yeah, you reached out to me here just recently about coming on here, and had you on my show first, actually, because we were able to slide you right in there, which was great, and we had a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk with you. So many books, so much stuff, so much research. I'm really impressed. Amazing. So it's a true honor and a delight. Okay, and I warned you about how I like to start the show.
You did,
So
yes.
I'm not blindsiding you here, because whenever I see people all grown up and doing amazing things, I always wonder, what they were like as little kids. Collecting tadpoles and climbing trees and riding bikes, and somehow getting involved in this field and rising to such stature and becoming so influential. What was your pathway to where you are today?
Yeah, well, the writing pathway, we kind of talked a little bit about this before the show. That's always been there. I've been writing since I was 7 years old. And actually back then I wanted to be a mystery writer. In fact, my very first book that I published was a mystery novel. But I grew up on like the Encyclopedia Brown books and was trying to mimic those. I wrote some little comic books and things like that as well. Some little ghost stories. And if you can imagine this as a 7-year-old, historic fiction. So it was using stick figures and cannons to talk about the American Revolution. It's kind of what that amounted to. Yeah. But as far as my path into all of this, I mean, it's really kind of two sides to it. So as far as like the ancient wisdom, the history, Egypt, all of that, I grew up on Indiana Jones in the 80s, of course, but it was the Mysteries of the Sphinx documentary, Robert Schoch and John Anthony West, which was in 93. And actually I was in the Air Force at the time when that came out, which just floored me about redating the Sphinx. And the following year, the film Stargate came out. So it was like, my juices were ignited and started researching that realm. But as far as the other side, supernatural, paranormal, and all of that, that really began when I was about 8 years old. And I'm an experiencer. Woke up in the middle of the night one night, and there's this tall, dark, shadowy figure in the corner of my bedroom. And at that point, I had no idea about this realm that we study these days, and I just thought that there was an intruder in the house, was in the house to steal something, kill me, something. That's where your mind goes as an 8-year-old.
How old were you?
8, just about 8 years old. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'd seen enough television and stuff as a kid that, okay, I'm gonna die or something's gonna happen here, right? Fortunately, I'm still alive to tell the tale, which is great. But the thing did get interactive with me. It approached my bed, and I'm staring into this blank black face. There's nothing there, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing. And it leans over, grabbed me by the wrists, crossed my arm across my body, and then runs off down the hall, of all places, into a closet. And by that point, I found my voice, found my legs, ran off screaming to my parents' bedroom. And they were trying to console me, calm me down, just trying to tell me I had had a bad dream. But, I knew I hadn't had a bad dream. I've been awake for this whole incident.
They always say that, don't they, parents?
Oh, yeah.
It's just a dream.
Well, that's what parents do. They're trying to make their kids feel safe, so they're not going to sit there and say, they're not going to tell me, oh yeah, it was the boogeyman, or, of course they didn't really know anything about, that essentially was a shadow person. They didn't know anything about that either.
I'm glad that you stated that it touched you.
Yeah.
Because you remember the shadow person I showed you, the picture that I had of?
Right.
That thing would show up. It would interact with me as well. And I finally got it at arm's length. It would stay far enough away from me. I wouldn't let it touch me anymore. Mm-hmm. And the last time it had anything to do with me, because I was mad, it shot me a bird. Okay. Have a nice day. Wow. Okay. So you're the only person other than myself that I knew I'd been touched by the thing. You're the only one I've ever heard say it touched you.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I know a few people who have. Of course, I did a lot of research for my book, The Walk in the Shadows, which is a guide to shadow people. And I'd been collecting stories and talking to people for several years up to that, because I was talking at events and conferences and things like that, and that was one of my primary topics. Once I became emboldened enough to actually tell the story, because for a while, it just, even thinking back to it, was a little bit nerve-wracking. And finally, as I got deeper into the world of the paranormal and talking with people and things like that, I became a little bit more open to sharing the experience. And then people asked me, well, why don't you, come and talk about that experience at whatever little conference or something they had going on. I was like, okay. And then I was doing that, and people were, coming up to me and sharing their experiences. So I started collecting all of these different stories, and eventually ended up writing the book.
That is truly amazing. I love that.
How old were you when you put out your first book? On the paranormal?
Yeah. Well, the first published book was the mystery novel, 2004. The first paranormal book was 2009. That was Ghosts of Maryland.
Oh, okay.
And that was one that, honestly, kind of fell in my lap. It's sometimes the universe just steers you in a certain direction. And I was doing a lot at the time to try to promote my mystery writing and that sort of thing. And this was back on the days of MySpace. And my editor for that particular book reached out to me over MySpace and said, hey, I understand you're a fiction writer, but I also noticed that you live in the state of Maryland, which I was at the time, and you have an interest in the paranormal, because I put on to my website a couple of little paranormal short stories and that sort of thing. So she asked, would I be interested in writing about true hauntings in the state of Maryland, because Schiffer, the publisher, was expanding their line of paranormal books at the time. So, I thought about it for, maybe a day, and I was, yeah, sure, let's do it. Sometimes things just kind of fall in your lap. And that's really kind of what started directing me more into that realm. I had previously, like when the World Wide Web was first, propagating in the early to mid 90s, you'd get into bulletin board systems and forums, you'd find chat groups and things like that, and you'd share some experiences and ask some questions and kind of, getting a little camaraderie and that sort of thing. So I'd always had that interest, and I was doing, my own sort of research on the side and that sort of thing. But it was when that book deal fell in my lap, that's when I really started to venture down that road.
Did you do a lot of personal investigation yourself? Like when you heard about a story, you went in yourself and did all the same research?
Yeah, I started doing, I mean, I had to do a lot of research for that book. Started dabbling in actually doing paranormal investigations. My first actual little paranormal investigation, I had no idea that's what I was doing at the time, was when I was about 14 years old, like right around 1989. And my friend David and I were at our friend Lori's house one day after school. And she lived in a historic home in the downtown area of our little town. And it's mostly teen drama, as far as the conversation. But then all of a sudden Lori says, well, I think my house is haunted. And
Wow.
David and I both perked up like, whoa, okay, well, do tell. Right. And so she starts telling us about the different things that happen in the house. There's the old family cemetery out in the backyard and that sort of thing. Her main concern was up in her bedroom, that she had this one wall that anytime she would tack something up on the wall, for teenagers, so posters, things like that, it would always fall down. So it would either, be like an hour, a day, a week later, whatever it was, it would always fall down off this wall. So it was like the haunted wall. So
That's
David and I decided that we're going to go upstairs and check this out. So, we're going to investigate it. Right. And so we get up there, we take a look at the wall, and Lori starts telling us some more stories. And then David, and I didn't realize this about him at the time, he's a very, very sensitive guy. He put his hand flat on the wall like that, and he just turned like this bright, bright red and started sweating profusely. I'm looking at David like, oh my gosh, what the heck's going on with my friend? I'd never seen anything like this before. So he starts going wall to wall in the house, trying to find like any other, like, quote unquote, hot spots. And, that was the moment that I knew that I had no idea what this was. I'd seen Scooby-Doo and stuff, of course, but, and some films and, things like that. So, of course, Ghostbusters. So it's like I had an inkling, but, like as far as truly being real, even though I'd had experiences throughout my childhood, it was like, wow, okay, there is something really, really legitimate to this. I don't know what it is, but somehow, some way I'm going to be involved in this for the rest of my life. And
wow.
here I am. Yeah.
Wow. So did your friend find anything about that wall, or did you discover?
Yeah,
I've never heard about a haunted wall. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. We kind of left it at that because right around then my mother was trying to track me down because I hadn't, I was being a little bit irresponsible. I hadn't called to let her know where I was gonna be. She was calling around to different houses, and yeah.
Uh-oh.
You were still under the emperor.
Yeah. So I kind of got in trouble for that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny that you published with Schiffer. I published with them too, and I sent them a collection of ghost stories, and they're like, "You got a lot from California here. How about writing California ghosts?"
There you go.
That kind of fell into my lap too. So
yeah, I ended up publishing 3 books with them, and I had a lot of people asking me, how to get published. What's the road you need to take, and so I told them the different options and things like that, and kind of threw them to the wolves. Well, early 20-teens, I guess, Amazon was making it a lot easier to publish your own books, and I was a little bit leery of like the whole self-publishing thing. But with a lot of other people asking me about book publishing and all that, it was like, I know how to do this. I know the process. I actually know how to publish a book, using these different tools at my disposal. So let me try my hand at, instead of throwing them to the wolves, publishing them, giving them a much better royalty than Schiffer. And let me try to take care of these people. And so that's what I ended up doing. And, end up publishing, through Amazon, but also through Ingram, and have different distributors for that now. So that's where, I ended up becoming a publisher as well. And so, of course, I publish under my own imprint now.
Wow. It's amazing how things work out that way. Very cool.
Congratulations. Right. Big deal. It really is.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, you've gotten all these interesting books, so I'm not even sure where to start. And you're intriguing me right off the bat about dating the Sphinx, because there's a lot of controversy about that.
Dating the Sphinx. It makes a lot of sense when you actually look at that Sphinx enclosure, I mean, you can see the channeling coming right down the wall that, is definitely water erosion. I mean, you
Right.
take a hose to, a mound of dirt in the backyard and you can make that happen. It's like, anybody, if you didn't show the Sphinx, anybody that would look at that would say, yeah, that's from water. But you throw the Sphinx on there, and then it's like, oh, well, maybe, and people start to hem and haw and want to backtrack. But the issue is that, of course, that our traditional archaeology has dated the Sphinx to about 4,500 years old, and with the water channeling, well, there wasn't that type of water in Egypt unless you go back to like the Younger Dryas era, and before the big warming trend and all that. So that puts it back at least a good 10,000 years, which, of course, traditional archaeology doesn't want to hear that. So they shunned it for a long, long time. And kind of their two big arguments was, one, we didn't have any other monuments around the world that were that old. And two, where were the potsherds that were that old? Well, as far as other monuments, once they found Göbekli Tepe, it kind of threw that argument out the window. And as far as potsherds, I mean, anybody who's been to the Sphinx enclosure knows that the whole thing is just solid limestone, and that the Sphinx has been restored many, many times over the millennia. Even thousands of years ago, they were restoring the Sphinx. That's the whole story of the dream stealing.
They wanted it there.
Thutmose the Fourth. Yeah.
Somebody wanted it. Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody doing restoration, you have all this pageantry to say, hey, we've restored it. Here it is. It's beautiful. They're going to clean up the whole area. So any potsherd from, before Thutmose the Fourth time, at least, they would have cleaned all that up. So it's going to be gone. So you're not going to find that there. Yeah. So it makes it extremely difficult to try to date these things when you know that this restoration has been done over the millennia. And then you had guys like Ramses II that put their name all over everything. So
erase people and rewrite it. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Build on top of it even.
Yep.
One of the things about the dating that geologists use is faulty. Because if you understand physics and you understand that radiation has a half-life, and but it's also affected by radiation incoming from the sky as well, from our sun. And it degrades it, rapidly degrades it. And there's an actual formula for it now that they're all starting to realize is correct. And that most of the things that they're dating now are older than 7,000 years. They're actually older than 14,000 years. Okay.
Right. And then when you have things like the pole flips that occur, that modifies it. And it's kind of sketchy. And, even trying to date humans. So they keep pushing that one back. And the latest accepted value was about 300 to 315,000 years. Well, just I think it was toward the end of last year, where it's a joint UK and Chinese team that figured out that some bones that they believe were Homo erectus are actually Homo sapien. They date to 1 million years ago. And the only reason why they previously said that they were Homo erectus was simply because of the age. It was 1 million years. So they're originally like, oh, it's 1 million years old. It has to be Homo erectus. But as they continued to do testing and research on it, it's like, oh, no, this is actually Homo sapien. So it puts us back a lot further.
Right.
It's amazing that they just can't, tell the truth about all this. I guess it's threatening to the current paradigm, and perhaps the powers that be don't want us to know that there were previous iterations on this planet of advanced civilizations. I don't know. It's odd to me that they just cannot tell the truth.
Yeah, they have a narrative that they're sticking to, and there's a few different reasons for it, probably several, but the old guard has their story. They want to they got to stay in place. They're trying to sell their book, and I get a part of it's ego. If we say that no, it's actually older, it's actually this, then they feel like their life's work for the last 40 or 50 years is out the window. Yeah, which to me, no, it's not, because all of the work that you did for the last 40 or 50 years, even if it's
toward the work that you do now. It's your unfolding union, you know.
Yeah.
Everything stands as it was for that time. And a lot of scientists and people who do research and stuff like that have to understand that Galileo knew a lot, but he didn't know everything.
Right.
Okay. And he wasn't proven wrong. He was just shown, it just was shown that we expounded upon it. You know, we gave more information and actually proved a few things that he said, and then went in other directions in other ways. That's what science is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we're stepping stones for the next generation. So some stuff we're going to have right, some stuff we're going to have wrong, but they're going to build upon it. And, you know, we would not be where we are today without our predecessors. I mean, we look back now from, you know, at theories and things that had 100, 150 years ago, and in some ways we laugh, but we had to go through that to get to where we are now. And our descendants 100 years from now are going to laugh at us too, but they would not get to where they're going to be without us.
Yeah, we had Michael Cremo on the show about a year ago. Man, have you talked to him? Amazing.
I've been on a panel with him before, yeah.
Yeah, if you have a chance to put him on your show, you absolutely should.
Yeah.
We have his contact because he's talking all about this, on how the mainstream scientific community rejects knowledge that doesn't fit their current belief system. It's not about belief, it's about the facts. So
right. Yeah, and we find that all throughout history, where you introduce a new idea and concept, and you have the establishment just reject and reject and reject until it's blatantly obvious that no, this is actually the case. But you kind of have to get through that old guard, which is really, really difficult. Yeah,
I agree.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't want to try to buck the trend either, because you know they want their funding, they want to get their grants to go out and do the research.
Well, you just nailed the head, put the nail on it right on the head, because that is the whole point. Those who fund everybody are the real ones. They're the marionette to the puppet, you know. And you actually in funding, they actually have clauses in there where you can be prosecuted if you go outside the parameters of where they want you to go. They will only let you do this. It's, you know, like wearing blinders, you know, tunnel vision, and they stick to it because they would lose their funding. A lot of people are doing stuff on the side privately, but they can't even bring that forward because it would argue with the funding that they're getting for what they want them to do. It's a very tangled web that they've created worldwide, you know, with all these.
It really is. Yeah. And that's why it takes people like us. Okay, I don't have a, you know, PhD in, geology or archaeology or anthropology or anything like that. But, I and you guys and the rest in this field, we can be outside that box. We can be outside those compartments and take a look at it all and piece it all together. And we don't have to worry about if somebody's grant money coming our way or anything, or trying to stay within the narrative. So we actually have, I believe, a much more accurate perspective.
Right. Yeah. There are also physicists and geologists out there who are on the outside of it, who don't take funding, and they've become very verbal of late. And one of them is Dr. Sabine. She's a particle physicist, and she has a podcast now. She actually calls BS on people, and I'm like, hey, go girl,
Nice.
Okay. And then there are others like Dr. Robitaille. He's astrophysicist, and he's very good at the dating, and his work is very, very comprehensive. And I tell everybody, if you want to hear the truth, just go listen to that guy talk. There's a few out there.
Yeah.
And
which is good because they help to give credence to what the rest of us are doing, which is wonderful.
That's right. Exactly.
So you have a pretty interesting background, and I don't know how much you can talk about it, but did you find out anything interesting in terms of UFOs and stuff in your time in the military?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I get asked a lot if I saw any UFOs when I was in Alaska, which I did not. I mean, people would talk about it up there, but never actually witnessed one myself. And that wasn't what I worked on up there at NSA. I was mostly helping the spies. I was support for the spies, but I did, I can say that, behind the scenes, I could at least see, because again, security clearances, even if you have a top secret security clearance, doesn't mean you can get into everything and see everything, because
Right.
it's very compartmentalized. You have different areas where you can get in technically, but you also have to have the need to know. So, okay, check, you got the right compartment? Yes. Do you have the need to know to get into this area? We'll see.
Not so much.
Yeah. So it's very tenuous, but I could at least see enough where I could see that they definitely, yes, had an interest in UFOs. They were doing research into UFOs and extraterrestrials, but I can't give you any specifics because I couldn't see those specifics, but I could see that they were looking into it.
Yeah, well, it's clear, I think, that this subject is being taken seriously at very high levels of government, so I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Alaska Triangle, I had no idea you were behind that TV show.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in a handful of episodes on that one, which was fun because it had been, when they brought me up there, it had been over 20 years since I'd been up to Alaska. And yeah, so we filmed on the side of Flat Top Mountain. They had me sitting on just a little crate for hours and hours and hours. But it was a good crew. And yeah, the Alaska Triangle people are always like, there's a triangle in Alaska. It's like, well, yeah, there's actually a lot of triangle areas all over the world. Everybody thinks of Bermuda, of course, but yeah, Alaska has one. There's the Lake Michigan Triangle, Bridgewater Triangle. There's the Dragon Triangle up by Japan. There's the Falkirk Triangle out in Scotland. So there's a lot of different ones. And actually the Dragon Triangle out in Japan, that's one they've been talking about for thousands of years. So it actually, predates what we know about Bermuda by quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, in similar fashion to Bermuda, it has a lot of that strange anomalous activity where you have strange disappearances of people and planes and ships, and you have a lot of UFO activity, heightened paranormal activity, all kinds of cryptid sightings and things like this. So it's a really, really active area.
Wow. So can you share some of the more interesting stories that you can recall from this book here? Looks really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. The disappearances, I think, is what really spooks people. You have some really, really high profile missing airplanes. The Hale Boggs, Nick Begich disappearance, 1972, which just disappeared in the thin area. Talking, House Majority Leader was on the plane at the time. So they launched the biggest search and rescue mission in U.S. history at the time. Still to this day, have never found a single thing about what happened.
Is it over land, or is it in the water somewhat, or where
it
is
was
it
over land? Yeah, it was they lost contact when they were going through the Portage Pass, and never heard from them again. And there was, there have been planes that have gone down in that area, and they've found these other planes, but nothing with the Boggs Begich plane. So that was a big high profile one. 1950 was Douglas Skymaster carrying 44 personnel, which disappeared around Snag in the Yukon area. It was a relatively nice January day. Everything with their last check-in was fine, and then suddenly they lost contact, just completely disappeared. They had both United States and Canadian forces out there looking around, all kinds of search and rescue planes, nothing. And shortly after that, like within a couple of weeks, there's another plane that went down to like around that area, a much smaller one. They found that right away. No,
44 people. That's got to be a fairly large plane.
Yeah. Douglas Skymaster was really big. And it was interesting is just before and just after that plane went missing, there were reports of UFO sightings. So a lot of people do attribute it possibly to do with the UFOs. Some people think it disappeared through a portal. For me, if it did disappear through a portal, I always follow up with the question. We didn't do this on the show, but I always follow up with the question, where did it go? Did it go to,
right?
Yeah. Did it go to some other dimension, some other place in the cosmos? Did it go to another point in time? And if it did go to another point in time, and we did use Bruce Gernon from the Bermuda Triangle on the show, where he actually did jump ahead in time with his experience there in the Bermuda Triangle. And so it's like, okay, so if it happened to Bruce, let's say that's, they went, instead of forwards in time, let's say they went backwards in time, like, we'll just use an arbitrary number, 500 years. Well, what would a airplane look like to indigenous people of the area 500 years ago? Because they would have no context for an airplane. So
where would you land even?
Yeah, where would you land? But, they would look up in the sky, see this thing with what looks like wings, very loud, so is this maybe where some of the Thunderbird legends come from? Are modern airplanes passing through some sort of portal in the sky and going back into the past? It's possible. I mean, at least gets people thinking.
Yeah. Well, if it comes and lands at an airport now and all these years later, that would be a Twilight Zone come to life.
Right. Well, it was, what was it? Was it Close Encounters that did the Flight 19 from Bermuda? Yeah, at the beginning. Yeah.
I have a huge question. Okay, I've been asking this question over and over and over again throughout my life, and I've never gotten the answer. And I won't get it tonight, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you have anomalous occurrences going on in a certain area, it would behoove whatever agencies are out there or whatever to get together, get a team together, and start researching the anomalies and what they are, why they are, and how they are. Right. And nobody ever talks about that. They are very well aware of the Bermuda Triangle. I grew up in Miami, so I'm very well aware of it. And I know what it is. I know from ET side of it, okay, being taught it is. But I've been waiting for humanity to catch up or at least admit what the hell it is, okay? And nobody wants to talk about it. They would rather have the disinformation out there than the reality of it.
We can't just drop a bomb like that, Dolly. You know what it is?
Yes.
Do tell.
Because our pole shift started in 1951. Earnestly, it actually began in 1858. The Carrington event was the shot across the bow of reality that it was happening. Beginning, it was a little archaic, but that was a huge shot of energy from the sun coming in, and our magnetosphere was pretty tight then. But it's not just what's coming into our magnetosphere, it's how the center core of our planet is acting, the magnetism in the core, because that's what's changing, okay? It's going to flip polarity. It's going to, north is going to go south and south is going to go north, you think, okay? But that's not exactly 100% correct either. And it is a process by which the chaotic streams of energy start to interface with one another, and they start to cross over one another, and they cause electromagnetic shots from the center of the planet straight out. What that does to people who literally live by the compass as they're flying through it, radio communications and everything, that shot of energy from two chaotic field lines,
right?
Energy coming, and let you have it. And there are exit areas on this planet that are known, like the Bermuda Triangle. There's one in the South American seas right now in the Atlantic that is now causing huge trouble, and they want to call it a triangle, but there are too many of us that are going to get them if they try, because it's where one of the poles is going to, and it's already showing itself. Okay.
Yeah, the South Atlantic anomaly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head, because that's actually what I talk about in Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. Is it comes back down to the electromagnetism, and yeah, you have. I'll just give my little spiel that I always give with the Alaska Triangle, where I talk about it being a fantastic cocktail of energy.
Right.
During the 1960s, the U.S. Department of the Interior did magnetic surveys of Alaska, about 100,000 square miles of it, which is only a sixth of the entire size of the state, right. But still sizable. They classified 5 different magnetic characters, within which they discovered what they called negative anomalies. Now, yeah, it goes back to the core of the planet, a spinning ball of iron that creates a magnetic field that protects us from the solar wind. But as it's passing through the planet, it passes through the mantle and the crust, so it's passing through different metals and minerals, and depending on the metal and mineral and the quantity of it, it creates these different localized electromagnetic fields. And that's just one aspect. With Alaska, you have all the seismic activity up there. I was there for a 6.9 magnitude earthquake. You sound like a cannon went off. So you have that energy. You have volcanic energy up there. You know, they have all kinds of volcanoes.
On our planet. Okay,
Yeah.
so you just answered, and I'm going to give you what the answer
Mhm.
is. What happens to planes that completely disappear? They took an electromagnetic hit so powerful it vaporized the plane.
Oh, okay.
Gone. Okay, literally vaporized them where they were, like a laser. Gone. With the fuel that they had on board and the electronics and all that other stuff being disrupted, they don't know where they are. They're starting to lose control of everything, and it draws them into the connection with that field line coming up of electromagnetic energy. And just like a laser can slice, dice you and vaporize you like an atomic bomb, so does that. Okay, and there are once or twice I know have happened where they didn't find wreckage, they didn't find anything.
Mhm.
Bermuda Triangle is interesting to me because they've finally gotten smart and set divers down, you know, the robotic things.
Yeah.
And they're finding planes now and boats that disappeared that they had no idea where the hell they went. They're in the bottom of it. It's a very deep trench down there. And they, you know, have the ability to go really down, deep down. And they're starting to find evidence of them going in. But not everything is accounted for. And
Right.
the one in Alaska that you're talking about, I have a pretty good idea that plane was vaporized, and
Okay.
you'll never find it.
Well, there's all kinds of things. Alaska is so
Yeah.
huge. Some of these people might be lost. When people talk about Bigfoot kidnapping people.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking. Yeah, the thing is, it's the number of missing people is more than twice the national average. And yes, you do have people that go wandering out there and get eaten by a bear. It does happen, but then you have incidents
twice the
like
national average. Wow.
yeah, more than twice the national average. But then you have people like Michael LeMater. He was part of the Mountain Marathon race. He was one of the participants, one of the runners in Seward, Alaska. And basically, you run up the mountain, you run back down. You have different checkpoints along the way. Disappeared right in the middle of the race. I have no idea what happened to you. You've reached the checkpoint at the top of the mountain, completely vanished in the middle of a very public race. And they got the state troopers, the dogs, the whole 9 yards, thinking that, you know, maybe he fell down a crevasse or something. Nothing. To this day, nothing's ever been found. Just disappear right in the middle of this race. You know, what in the world?
Yeah.
So yeah, some things are very, very unexplained.
Yep.
Well, that does sound mysterious because there would be a lot of people around him at that time, right? I mean, this was a public race with how many people about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how many people are running, but they usually hundreds of people are involved between the runners, the organizers, the families, you know, all of that, the local festivities that go on around this race. So yeah.
So what would be your theory? Any idea?
Yeah, disappeared into the Alaska Trail. I mean, you hear stories about because people say, well, maybe you step through a portal or something like. Well, maybe because you hear these fantastic stories of people are just hiking through the woods and all of a sudden their buddy that was right next to them is gone, and never hear from them again. But some people do come back and they tell some really fascinating stories that, for example, well, I was walking down the path. I heard a noise off to the side. Took 2 steps to go see what the noise was. Couldn't find what was making the noise. Turned back around. Path is gone. And now I'm lost out in the woods. So how do they get transported to another point in the woods? They get transported to another point in time. What happened that they took 2 steps and the path is gone.
Very bizarre.
Yeah.
So did you investigate Bigfoot stories up there as well?
I mean, I covered it. I'm not a huge Sasquatch. I don't go out squatching or anything like that. I mean, I was in the Boy Scouts when I was a kid, but yeah, I mean, I covered a number of different stories. You have like the Portlock Hairy Man, which is kind of interesting. You have a lot of the other Sasquatch sightings throughout the state. For me, what was interesting were the stories of the giants up there. So they found remains of giants, different graves of giants, and digging back into the legend and lore of the native Inuit up there, found this fantastic 500-page handwritten book from the 1930s. The guy's name was Michael Kazimnook. So he had an English name and then the Inuit name. And it's very broken English, but as you go through, he wanted to make an account of all of their legends and lore before, kind of got lost to time. And many of those stories were actually stories of giants that came over from Siberia. And what was interesting were the stories about the giants mating with the humans, and just the way that the stories were written. I'm kind of scratching my head, like, yeah, this sounds like something out of the book of Enoch and the Nephilim and the Watchers, and stories like this. What in the world are these stories doing up here in Alaska? It's
Because
kind
they're
of
all over the world, actually.
they're all over the world. Yes.
Unless it's true.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised to find
They're
out.
not really the Nephilim, they're the Anunnaki.
Well, yeah, there's that. I mean, they would have. Yeah,
They got around.
I mean,
they did. Yeah.
giants came kind of out of the blue for me late into researching all this, and I was surprised to see how much validation and verification there is of these accounts of giant bones and
Mhm.
so forth. So I do think something's going on here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just stories. It's really
We got some in North Georgia, right near where we live.
Oh, really?
Literally. We live like we're in the crook of Tennessee, North Carolina, and Georgia. We're in the Blue Ridge.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's a town up here that has ruins of what could only have been giants. They could have only been, the rocks could have only been placed by giants. There's some out in Texas as well, but they had bones here, but of course the government had to go and get them, and nobody knows where they went.
That's always the story. Yeah. Yeah. You find all those old stories and newspaper articles, here, found the giant bones, Smithsonian came to collect, and then disappeared. They might even have a log entry with the Smithsonian, but you go to ask somebody, hey, can I take a look at that?
Nope.
Well, yeah, the log entry's there, but we can't find the artifact. So sorry. Okay.
It's another cover-up of a major whole field of study that is insane to me. And I looked into it, and I was surprised to see the name Smithsonian come up repeatedly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I always think about that because we already know that museums and the Smithsonian have only a portion of all these artifacts and valuable,
they only display a small bit of it. They have warehouses full of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I forget his name, but the whoever was the head of the Smithsonian there in the late 1800s, his philosophy was anything pre-Columbian, anything before Christopher Columbus came to America is just heathen. We don't need to regard it. It's not really American history or whatever. So we're just going to toss it, destroy it, whatever. Go, feel free to till up the mounds. All that. It was
my.
Yeah. That's why we've lost like 80% of our mound structures throughout the country.
Yeah, there's some down in Macon here.
Yeah, we have several here in Ohio.
Yeah. And there's like a couple in North Georgia as well, and I know there's one in Tennessee that I know of, and but they are hugely protected by certain groups of people and won't let the government come near them. They've made sure they can't touch them, and then they let people in. I actually got to go in and see the ones in Macon on a tour. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting how consistent the giant stories are too. With I think two sets of teeth, 6 fingers, just little details that are like surprisingly consistent.
Right. Red hair and things like that. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've done a lot of work on shadow people, so why don't we dive a little bit into that?
Yeah, sure.
Your own, and I think that's what you were speaking about at UFOCon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, UFO MegaCon. That's I spoke on that there.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about what are shadow people?
Well, I mean, they can be a lot of different things. As everybody wants like one single answer. So I kind of break down the different. It really depends on the particular shadow because they appear in a lot of different forms, a lot of different ways, and they could. The first one that I had an interaction with was, fully formed, was solid. It was just very dark. You have others that are mists and wisps. You have ones that are just in amorphous smoke. You have ones that wear different types of clothing and things like this. So there's a lot of different styles and variations. So some are human spirits that just aren't fully forming as an apparition. You have ones that are interdimensional beings. You have ones that are extraterrestrials. You have ones that are time slips. You have ones that are light beings where you can't see the light and you're just seeing the form because we only see into a very narrow band of the spectrum, which is really what it comes down to, is the way that our eyes take in the light. We only do see into that very narrow band of the spectrum. So there's so many aspects that we're unable to see and detect. So it really depends on the shadow itself. So that's where like you have to put on your investigator hat and try to figure out, okay, what exactly am I dealing with here?
Now I have a huge question.
Okay.
Do they communicate with people? Because mine communicated with me.
Yeah, they can communicate with people. Usually it's some sort of thought transference, some sort of telepathy with which they speak to people.
Yeah.
You know, because they don't really have the mechanical aspects of a traditional mouth. So yeah, it's usually some sort of telepathy they communicate with.
Now, would you differentiate this from a traditional spirit, so to speak? Your
Yes.
Betsy?
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, some can be human spirits. It's more the exception rather than the norm in my experience. But you know, I do have some that are very obvious, you know, people that I trust with my life, you know, telling their experience, where you know my friend Rob Guttrow is a psychic medium. There's a lot with pet communication actually, which is really interesting. But you know, his aunt appeared to him one time as a shadow so that he could deliver a message to his mother. His thought behind it was that she had expended all of her energy to get there and finally got there, and then you know, could only manifest as a shadow, but still was able to get the message to him. So okay. There was one that we were on a paranormal investigation at the old Mineral Springs Hotel in Alton, Illinois, and it was I was hosting an event that night, and it was just a handful of us left, you know, because the end of it was, okay, we're gonna do a paranormal investigation. So we're in the old abandoned part of the hotel, the top floor, and we were in the corner suite, which has a confirmed suicide, and there's always a lot of activity going on there. So we were there in Pearl's room doing an EVP session, trying to communicate, and all of a sudden I hear a noise coming from down the hall. So I go out to take a look. I'm looking down the hall, and all of a sudden I see this black smoke coming from down the hall, and I'm like, is there a fire? You know, but I'm not smelling smoke. And it started doing something really strange as it was kind of billowing forth. It started creeping up the wall on the right hand side of the hall, and it creep back down, and creep back up. All the while, it's coming closer and closer. And finally, this shadow smoke morphed into the apparition of a little girl. And by that point, the others had joined me. There were 5 of us, and we all saw her. And we're like, you know, trying to coax her closer, come closer, come closer. And she stopped at this one particular doorway in the middle of the hall. And she wouldn't come any closer than that. And what was interesting about that was that room upstairs, even though I'd never had any experiences in that particular room, a lot of other people had seen or witnessed the little girl within that room. So there are all kinds of like trigger objects, like little teddy bears and toys and things like that in that room. And she stopped right there. So kind of like confirmed the story. And we never could get her to come closer. And eventually she kind of dissipated away. But it was like, okay, so there I'm actually seeing the shadow turn into the apparition. But you know, some of these others that, you know, I think are slips in time. The one that I had an interaction with when I was a little kid, I had a hypnotic regression some years ago to take a closer look at that. And, you know, to make a long story short, we basically figured out that this was some sort of interdimensional being. We were actually able to channel it. The hypnotherapist was able to channel this being. We were communicating directly with it. And when she was asking questions like, where are you from? Its answer was, I'm from another space.
Yeah.
And so followed up with, well, do you mean another dimension? And its response was, well, you might call it another dimension, but really it's another space, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah. Mine told me point blank, because I asked the same thing, where are you? You know?
Yeah.
And it took a second, and he said, you think of the second dimension as where I am.
Okay.
Okay. And then it told me point blank, I live with you all the time. I see you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said,
Interesting.
thanks. And
That's not creepy. Yeah.
why are you all of a sudden in my view? What is it? What's going on with that? And it said, you are interesting. And I said, I'm not that interesting.
Nice.
And it would try to touch me every now and then, like it would put its hand on my shoulder, or it would grab my hair and tug it to get my attention. And I would tell it, absolutely stop touching me. I don't care where you're at. I don't care if you live in the same exact place I'm in right now. I've had enough of you. Go away. You're bothering me. And it took me 6 bloody months to make it understand that if you came within 12 feet of me, I was going to find a way to get you. And I'm not kidding. And I finally convinced it that I don't care if you're around. You gotta at least give me my peace, because I can't have a life with you. That was my point.
Yeah. You need to set rules and boundaries. And a lot of people that I work with, especially back when I was doing like a lot of paranormal investigations, I really don't do so many of those anymore. But back then people would want cleansings and things like that, and we would do that on occasion. But for a lot of people, they were just like, well, something moved across the table, so I just want it gone. It's like, well, okay, let's try to understand what it is first, because if you come to some sort of understanding, because sometimes it was just, somebody who used to live there and it was their home. That's, so they're still hanging around. And so it's like, maybe you can come to some sort of understanding, and you each have your own boundary and space and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
What's funny to me is you're running away from a shadow person at age 8. A few years go by, you're saying, come closer, come closer.
Running toward them. Yeah. Well,
I've got photographs of me at all times in my life. I see people who are dead. Okay.
Sure.
I feel them first. I can hear them for a second, and then they'll manifest. But a lot of times everybody around me will start seeing smoke. And Polaroids were a big deal, back in the 90s, or always been, but really in the 90s, and they had the new ones out. And my ex would take pictures of it, and you could see it trying to assume a shape, and it was going to show itself. And one time it did, and he nearly lost his mind. He threw the camera at me and ran. And I was like, and then his grandparents showed up at their grave. His grandmother had just passed away, and we'd gone down for the funeral, and my daughter was just a little thing. She's 3 years old, and she was standing around the grave. So we had come back to say goodbye, and the lady, she was standing there. I could see her standing there looking at me, and my daughter turned around and said, "Grandma, Gar." And I was like, "Oh wow, you see her too." And he took a picture, and there's the smoky apparition around it trying to hug us.
That's an amazing ghost picture. So kind of focusing down on the whole subject of ghosts. There's a lot of controversy about even what they are, because some say, oh, it's basically a psychic echo. Others are, well, this is an active spirit. Others are like, well, no, this is you doing it. Poltergeist, it's a disturbed teenager. No, it's a demonic creature. This is an interdimensional thing. I mean, it's probably at some point different explanations for a lot of what's going on here.
Yeah, it's everybody wants like one single answer, that this is it and this is only it. But there's actually a lot of different answers, because there's a lot of different situations. So for my Shadow Dimension docuseries, which is still running on Tubi TV and Roku channel, I have on there Mark Anthony, who's a psychic medium. He goes by the Psychic Explorer, psychic lawyer he used for a while. In any case, he has a great quote on there talking about, we are dealing with several different species using a similar energetic modality to come into our world. And I really believe that's the case. So when people try to say, well, it's an interdimensional being, or it's a human spirit, or, it's a demon, or it's an extraterrestrial, I just say, yeah, it can be all of those. And you really have to kind of try to figure out, your particular experience that you're having.
Right. I always tell people, you have every opportunity in the world when you're experiencing something to slow the pace down of what's happening to you by asking 3 simple questions. One, who are you? Where are you from? And how did you get here?
Yeah.
Those are the three most important things you can say to anything that's trying to have an experience with you, and not be afraid of the answer, because they will generally tell you,
Yeah.
give you a really good answer. But most of the people are so bloody afraid of the phenomena
Mhm.
that they lose their cookies and they run or scream or ooh, they go nuts, and then they feel like a victim. And it's like, no, you're not a victim.
I mean, there's some
So,
really strange
People
stories.
tend to fear what they don't understand.
right.
And
I heard one story about these people who got rid of their bed. They're like, we don't want it, it's haunted. So this guy took it. And of course, the bed floats up off the ground and he gets rid of the bed too. So it's apparently the bed that's haunted.
the bed's haunted, the haunted bed.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
There
No,
was
there's a fantastic quote from Dr. Hanselter that I've always enjoyed and I've shared many, many times, where he said, there is no supernatural world. Everything that we experience
Is
is
natural.
natural. Yeah.
That's
And that's very true. I mean, yes, it might not happen very often. It's definitely the exception rather than the norm, but it's still natural to our world and our universe.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if more people paid attention, that's the other thing. People walk in a dream state all the time. They're all in their head. They're thinking of other things. They're not really being good observers of what's actually
Yeah.
going on around them. And they're missing 90% of it, literally missing 90% of life. And it's one of the things, people say, well, how do I become more psychic? You need to shut the brain up,
Yeah.
to let it in so that you can actually see what's going on,
Yeah, we get in. I'm guilty. I think we're all guilty of it. At some point in our lives, that we get caught in the rat race where there's so much noise in our lives of whatever might be going on with the job. And it's tax season. We got to pay the taxes and then do all that. There's so much. We've got these wars going on all over the world, so all this stuff is thrown at us constantly. And so that's what's taking our attention.
Yeah. I just have to tell you one quick ghost story because it always comes to mind when I think of ghosts. This guy was renting a hotel room in an old hotel and opened the closet, and there's someone who committed suicide by hanging. He slams the door closed, goes running up to the desk and says, "How could you rent me this room? This is really rude. Did you not check the closet?" They turned pale. They're like, "Someone, that happened about 3 days ago or last week or something. He's not there." They went and checked. Of course, the closet was empty.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow he picked up on that.
Yeah.
He wasn't even really psychic. So
that goes back to the echo that Dolly was talking about before. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
exactly right then. Yeah.
It's just insane because I get the feeling ghosts are pretty much around us all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's psychic. You just don't have the volume turned up. That's all.
Yeah. Everything comes down to frequency, resonance, energy, vibration, and we each have a little bit of a different personal resonance. So, you might not in that moment, because your resonance also fluctuates in that moment. If you're tuned into something else going on over here, because we have all these busy lives, you're going to be shut out from all the other things that are going on around you.
Yep, exactly.
All right, I'm going to pop up another book because there's so much to explore here and get you, what's the deal with portals to the stars, inside Stargates, Atlantis, and secrets of ancient Egypt? Tell us some secrets of
ancient Egypt, the Stargates. Yeah, this book, it's the second in my Connecting the Universe series. So Travels Through Time is the first, Portals to the Stars is the second, which actually it wasn't originally going to be the second. Originally it was going to be Energized Earth, because I started with time travel, the nature of dimensions, the cosmos, how time works, all that. And then I figured the next book should be, well, let's get we dealt with time and dimensions, let's deal with the earth and the earth energy and all that. But I was out in Egypt, as I do, because I host the Stargates tour out there, and I had given a presentation one day that we were on a boat. We have like a 4-day now cruise, and as we're going along, we end up doing a couple of presentations. So I just got done giving a presentation. I was feeling really inspired, and the boat had docked. We're headed out to one of the temples, and it hit me as we're headed out there. It's like, no, because the book was originally the series was going to be Connecting the Universe, and then it's like, no, Connecting the Universe is not a one single book. It's going to be an entire series. And then coming back to Egypt again another time, it just became, no, it's not going to be energized Earth. It's going to be, we're going to do the Stargates, where everything we've been talking about on the tour, I finally need to get into a book. So Egypt always kind of inspires me in different ways.
I can see why. It's very
yeah, it's incredible. But yeah, the Stargates, I mean, they're hidden right in plain sight. You have the hieroglyphs actually on these different chambers and doorways that actually say Stargate is right in plain sight.
If you go to Tutankhamun's, they do the thing. They go around the country with the artifacts that are replicas mostly of everything. They have a few items that are original, but it's mostly replicas. And in one of the rooms is actual Stargate room that they used during his time. And half the people in there were like, huh? What? What do you mean Stargate? And it's like, no, they would go in there and they would leave and they would go somewhere else. The archaeologists will tell you that it's just a Stargate to the afterlife, right?
The archaeologists would tell you the false doors are just, the afterlife journey. And then the actual Stargate hieroglyphs, they will say, well, it just means gate. Right. Which is totally bizarre to me. And this is something Muhammad Ibrahim and Muhammad was the one that really kind of pieced it together. And when he was showing me, I was like, yeah, I get what you mean. So now we've combined forces on the whole Stargate tour and everything. But it's really, really mind boggling where you have the glyphs, the set of hieroglyphs for star. And then you just add a gate onto there. Okay. And that means star, right? And gate on its own, means gate, as well as gate with some of the glyphs from star. You put them together to get this gate. And then when you combine them, according to archaeologists, no, it just means gate. It's like, well, what the heck happened to the star? No. Sitting right there.
Light gate, by the way, because I was taught by ET how to light gate. Okay. I never heard Stargate until I started paying attention to Egyptology and all that. I was like, oh, it's just a light gate. That's what that is. And,
it is because because when people would go through, and this is more, it's like, this is more from a past life regression that I've had where I've actually seen Stargates in action. It was the energetic body, it was the light body that would come through. So it's like your physical body would stay where you're at, but your light body would go through it, or you would just simply communicate through it from one person to another. So it's sci-fi has kind of it's a dual prong. Yeah, I mean it's at least done a service to the point where it's kind of introduced people to the concept of Stargate, but it's so enmeshed in science fiction, and you got the big circle that turns in the water, and you go through. It's like, no, it's not the way it was, but okay.
No. He actually does light gate clean across the universe. I mean, physically go. That's why the craft are living organisms, that are indwelled by other beings to facilitate it, because they actually go through a light gate. They produce the gate and they go through. And I know this because I've actually done that. Been there, done it. More than I can tell you about. And it's very rapid. It's very fast. It's less than 2 seconds. You're in a space where you can't even breathe. I held my breath. The longest gate that I've been through was 6 seconds. And it was kind of uncomfortable. And they've even actually taken me into the fifth dimension, which was almost impossible for me to stand. I took it for like 3 or 4 minutes. By the fifth minute, I was like, get me out. And they did. And I found out that you become non-corporeal in the fifth dimension. You don't have a body like this.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's I mean, our geometry, our physical body doesn't mesh with the fifth dimension. Well, and a lot of these that we're calling interdimensional beings, I mean, we're not seeing them quite correctly with our eyes, because we only to see into a very narrow band of the spectrum, and they're coming into our dimension that we can't quite see it the right way, because they have more geometry to them. It's kind of like that whole idea of flatland, where two-dimensional two-dimensional universe, everything's triangles and squares and all that. When you drop a square into it,
and the truth is, we're all on top of each other in the same space. There are literally 12 dimensions existing at the same time, all one on top of the other.
Right.
And it just depends on the light and the frequency of that light to whether you see it or go to it.
Right.
And fifth dimensional beings. That's why they use the craft. They make them livable for the being to get into and indwell it, like we indwell our bodies. They indwell the craft to come here into the third dimension. That's how they do it.
Right.
And it blew me up when I was a kid learning that from them. Freaked me out. I was like, what, you doing what? Okay, show me.
Well, and that's like, okay, when like the big drone flap that we had like a year and a half ago, and they just pawned it off on, oh yeah, it was just government testing. After, for months, every government organization was like, we don't know what's going on. And finally they gave us this lame excuse. Oh yeah, government testing. Well, that doesn't explain, for one, it was happening all over the world, not just New Jersey, but two, you had many people witnessing these balls of light that either were turning into craft, into the drones, or you had drones coming in and out of them, which, you know, would have been the mode of transportation or the craft itself. And so, yeah, we end up with these lame excuses, but we're seeing, you know, with our own eyes that no, there's more going on interdimensionally here.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting because science is, you know, quantum physics has basically confirmed the existence of other dimensions, and it's so interesting to me. You know, this book, it's amazing to me that they're still clinging to the idea that, oh, the pyramid's just a tomb. Don't worry about it. When it's got so much knowledge there that you can dive into, and it's a complete rabbit hole. I mean,
Right.
Mathematics of it. My dad was a real big mathematician. Okay, he was a genius. And when I was young, he said, "I need you to." He wanted me to learn how to do, learn how to draw. Okay, and he made me my own little table in his office. I had my own little drafting table, and he started giving me things to learn how to do. And I was doing them. You know, I was a teenager. And one day he came in and said, "We need to have a serious talk about something." And he put a pyramid down that he had built, an exact replica of Giza, and on the drawing board. And he said, "We're going to talk about this now. You need to understand." And I'm like, okay. And he said, every computation of quantum physics is in this thing. It's got the Solfeggio expression, all of it, all the numbers are there in this thing. I said, really? And he started to show me all the the measurements, everything, even on the inside, because you could take it apart and you could see the inside of it. And he said, "What do you think this was for?" And I said, "It looks like a battery." And he said, it was a battery, a giant damn energy cyclone. And I said, "But it needed water. Where's the water?" He said, "Well, back then when it was operational, there was water everywhere, all around it. Giza was a flooded plain, and they built it up on a flooded plain, and they actually had walls, around everything to gate off water so that they could get into it and away from it." And he said the composition of it, at the top of it, there was a copper cap on the top of this thing. And I was like, oh my God. And he said, "So what do you think they were doing?" And I said, "I don't know. They were giving electricity to somebody." And he said, "Yes."
Yeah.
And he said, "You need to understand that." And then he gave me the date of it. And it was actually, Giza is 27,000 years old, for real. 27.
Yeah. And there's some, 27,000. I've heard some people say 60. There's, and I'm, and I agree with those numbers, like much older than what they are currently saying. Because when you look at the pyramids, the large ones, they're unlike the structures of the dynastic Egyptians. The dynastic Egyptians put hieroglyphs all over everything, and they did make some smaller pyramids that kind of mimicked the larger ones, but nothing to the grand scale of those. And they're falling apart. You go to like the Pyramid of Unas, and it's nice. The exterior is completely falling apart. You go inside, there's all kinds of hieroglyphs inside. But you know what? The dynastic Egyptians, I can absolutely believe that looked at those large ones and are like, that's cool. Let's build one of those. And in Pyramid of Unas, they did put a body in there. But those large ones, there's no hieroglyphs. There are no bodies ever found. You find, all these different deposits throughout the complex that don't make any sense whatsoever for it being a tomb. Like these different builds up of salts. You have in the Queen's Chamber this huge corbelled niche, 15 feet tall, that traditional archaeology tries to say, well, there was probably a statue or an idol that was there. Like, really? How do they, if it was there, you could say, okay, they built around it or whatever, but how did somebody get it out? Because there's no way it's fitting through the little crawl space to get,
That's right.
that you used to get in there. But
Mhm.
the whole back side of this corbel niche, so first off, it has a little shaft that goes off of it for about 90 meters deeper into the pyramid. And the whole backside of it is burnt and charred, and the stone itself is melted. Yeah, so
Wow.
something very hot.
Electromagnetic battery. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and
Yeah.
they even, back in 2018, they did do scientific studies on the Great Pyramid, which did show that it was harnessing energy from the ground and storing it within its chambers. That
Mhm.
actually was a scientific study that came out 8 years ago. So, so that is legitimate, and you have to imagine, the pyramid is in ruins today. It's literally a shell of its
Oh,
former.
yeah, they're taking that whole outer layers of it off.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah,
put the
yeah. There's
top-
nothing left. All that's gone.
Yeah.
And there's so much that's been removed from it. There's so many holes in it now. It's the even the ventilation. It's kind of a shame. You walk into the king's chamber, and they've got this mess on the one side of the wall where they shoved this fan in there to get ventilation going, and they've ruined the whole side of the wall to do this.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even done neatly. It's like these large irregular chunks that were taken out of the wall. It's like,
Yeah, they
What,
drilled
what,
in.
what do you think of the images they found underneath the pyramids? Not too long
yeah. That's fascinating. Good friends with Trevor Grassi, who's the guy that kind of broke the news for the Coffrey Project, and I've talked a lot on this with those guys. And yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, people have to understand the technology that was used, because they always think, well, it was ground penetrating radar, can't get that deep. Well, it wasn't ground penetrating radar; it was satellite SAR scans, which actually are surface scans, which also kind of blows people's minds of, well, how to get that sort of information off of doing a surface scan? Well, the surface scan is running, it's scanning for micro vibrations that are coming up out of the ground from voids, and they can detect where the voids are and how deep they are through these micro vibrations. And this is stuff that they've tested on underground laboratories and things like this that they know are a couple kilometers below the surface, and have detected those just fine. You see the proof. There it is right there. So them detecting these voids under there, okay, there's something there. Now you have all these different speculations as to what they were. Water is definitely on the table. So the whole idea of,
that would fit in with the whole battery.
Yes.
Fit in with the whole battery thing.
That's right. A specific number for the mass of it, and it had just enough, exactly what it needed.
Yeah. And people say, well, what about the water table, because they have to create this thing. What about the water table? Well, yeah, water's part of the functionality, but Egyptians had to be masters of water diversion. I mean, back in the day, the river and everything was much closer. So the water table would interfere with everything on the plateau to a much greater extent. But even the shafts and things like this in the Giza Plateau that the traditional archaeologists are there. There's no way to hide something like the Osiris shaft. We've had access to that since the 1930s, and you can get a private tour down into the Osiris shaft. Well, the bottom of that is water, right? So, and the river is much farther away.
Yeah.
So, the ancient Egyptians wouldn't have been down there in the water chiseling away. So they had to have diverted the water. So they had to be masters of diverting water.
And here's a big one for you. We were in a different position on the planet, was in a different part. In other words, we flop over every 12,000 years or 6,000 years. Okay. And if we're the position we're in, you could dig down, no problem. It's all dry. But they knew it was going to flop up, and they were planning for it. So when it flopped up, there was the water for you. They didn't have to divert anything. They were digging dry, planning for when it was going to be hitting the water time. We are going back to that. If you live long enough to see it, you'll know. We're going to flop again, and this time Egypt's going to flood again. That's how you figure that out.
I just want to let the people in chat know we are going to get to questions. So if you have any questions, now would be your last chance to pop them up, but there are a few there.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
But before we do, let's cover this as well. Just want to say the book covers are awesome, really beautifully done. I don't know who does that for you, but man, just the colors.
That would be me.
Okay, good job.
Thank
You're
you.
an artist as well, I see.
Yeah.
So this one travels through time, inside the fourth dimension, time travel, and the stacked time theory. You got me intrigued, Mike.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of that's my deep dive into the nature of time, dimensions, the possibilities of real time travel, which yes, I do believe actually exists. And we're talking a little bit earlier about scientists and quantum physicists, things like. I have a uncle who's a retired nuclear physicist, and
Nice.
he's out in San Diego. He was in town visiting. He's at my aunt's house, and she's trying to make breakfast for him. And he's, he in his older age, he likes memes. So he's all in the kitchen with this one. Look at this meme. Look at this. He's a real fun guy. And she's like, Bill, get out of the kitchen. I'm making you breakfast. Go read Mike's new book. So, which he had on the coffee table. So he picks up the book. He starts reading it, and apparently he really liked it because he got done with it within a couple of days. Because when I showed up there for some barbecue that we were having there, he pulls me aside. He's like, "So, I read your new book," and I'm like, "Uh oh, here it comes." Here's a real physicist who's gonna lay it on me about my book. And he's like, actually, I agree with everything that you talk about in there, but there's one thing I need you to answer for me. I'm like, okay, what's that? So I have what I call stack time, which is, take where you're sitting right now. Every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen are all there concurrently right now. Every moment, I call it stack time because every moment to me is like a photograph in a giant stack of photos. And they each resonate on a different frequency. Occasionally, two of those moments will resonate at the same frequency. They bleed into each other. We have what we call a time slip, but everything is there, past, present, future. And he's like, okay, I get what you're saying about that, but the Earth is physically in a different place now than it was 20 years ago. So if all these moments are stacked up, but we're in a different physical place, then how does that work? And so I'm like, that's a great question, Uncle Bill. And it took me half a moment. It's going to be part of an addendum that I'm putting in there, this whole little story. I'm like, I got one word for you. He's like, oh. I said, entanglement. He's like, oh, yeah, that'll work.
Wow.
So that was a nice little affirmation for me that, yeah, the ideas and concepts in there. It's what I say about travels through time is that there's a lot of science in it without being too sciencey. There's a lot of metaphysics in it without being too metaphysical. But at its heart, it's a philosophy book. So it gets into a lot of different ideas, like we were talking about, things like shadow people and extraterrestrials and things like this, how they may be traveling, interdimensionally. It gets into dreams and ESP and things like this. How time slips work, and then I do get into like the ideas of what real time travel looks like with the consciousness and things like this. So it gets into a lot of different areas.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't think we fully understand the nature of time, just given all the anomalies we're seeing with it. I mean, even in the UFO field, where people are pulled from their room and have an hour-long experience, and they come back minutes later.
Where'd they go? Well, if they were pulled into another dimension, well, that would be outside of time. Space. Yeah. Right. So
the third dimension is very gravity heavy. First, second, and third dimensions are packed. Your protons, every proton in your body is light. Okay. They've actually been able to see it now. They know that there are 3 nodes in every proton and they emit light. They're electric. Okay. Outside the third dimension, you hit the fourth dimension and you're starting to lose gravity. It's not completely gone because we're almost into the fourth dimension now as we are.
The fourth dimension is time.
Right, exactly. But when you hit the fifth dimension, all bets are off. It's all gone because there's no more gravity in it. It's gone.
And those in the fifth dimension are outside of time. They can come and go as they please. Yeah.
Time. And so all knowledge, everything is there. The entire
that's a great point. Yeah, because I have a chapter in there on what I call eternal knowledge.
Yes.
But some people call it the Akashic records. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, but I call it eternal knowledge because if all time is concurrent, past, present, future, that means everything that we're going to learn about the universe is there right now.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And The way, just so you know, you don't know this about me, but I've been pulled out of time, okay,
Okay.
by ET, and brought, as a young child, brought back, not fully in time. In other words, I wasn't brought back into the third dimension. I was brought into the information of what was occurring, what we understand is that time, okay?
Yeah.
And I was told how to act and what to do and how to be careful.
Into the past, you mean?
Into the past, yes. And I interacted this much. I was terrified the whole time I was doing it. And a relative of mine who could paint in Sweden, and here we go, I'm picked up in the United States, and suddenly I'm in Sweden all the way back in time, okay, as a young child. And I remember the whole thing was very physical to me, even though I wasn't fully physically there, okay? They could see me, they could hear me, but I was probably, you know, they didn't know who or what I was. They just thought I was related to them. That's all they were told.
Okay.
And when I came out of it, years and years and years and years later, my great-grandmother's Swedish. I speak Swedish, first language. So
nice.
Screaming at me from the other room, Dolly, that's you, that's you. And I'm looking at this thing she's holding up, and she's got a beautiful poster that our relative,
Carl Larson.
Yes, Carl Larson, thank you, had painted of his twin daughter's birthday. And there I am sitting in the background.
Oh, wow.
And I know it's you. I know it's you. And when I saw it, my brain went, poof, I know I was there. She said, what do you mean you were there? And I said, I remember that. That's a memory of mine. I didn't know what was going on. I don't. She said, what? And I said, I was there. And so I decided to let somebody who does facial recognition look at it. And they did all the numbers. And he said, no, that's you. That was you as a child. They pulled my pictures as a child, and it's you. He said, how the hell did that happen? And I said, I can't explain it to you. They brought me back a few minutes after I left.
Yeah.
Within minutes after I left, I was brought back. And I was told, leave it alone. You had to have the experience. There's a reason for it. Just leave it alone. And it took me a lifetime to understand what they mean by gaining time or losing time for people. Because I've never ever I've never run into myself or anything like that. There's none of that. They don't do it. You always come back into the timeline minutes after you left. But I would spend weeks. I'm actually physically older than I really am. Okay. My chronological.
I wrote a whole book about Dolly's experiences called Symmetry, because a lot of what you're talking about, she's had firsthand experiences with some of this.
Yeah, fascinating. That's really fascinating.
When I hear you talking, I'm like, wow, you're pretty damn smart, because you're dead on. You got it. You understand. You don't even have to be a physicist to get it. That's the important part of this.
Right.
And so
we need to pop up some questions now before we get too far in. We've got, let me see, we have about 15 minutes.
All right.
Okay, if you don't mind. This is
absolutely
Foggy Notions podcast. This is Mike. Your Egyptian Stargate tours explore lost advanced technology and alchemy. How might Bob Lazar's S4 gravity amplifiers and stable element 115 connect to ancient portal tech or esoteric fuel sources? I don't know if you've seen that S4 story and know Bob Lazar's story, but
yeah. And a lot of people are talking about S4 right now with Bob, and it's interesting with Bob's story, because I believe him, but not because of his stories about S4 and all that. It's more because of the personal aspect of it that he was having at that time with his wife and everything, and how he was on the verge of having his clearance pulled because of the things that were going on within the household. And something similar had happened to me when I was at NSA. I was like, he is dead on describing that whole process. Absolutely correct, because I went through the whole thing. It's like, this guy's
back up. Well, explain your experience.
Just it was my ex-wife. Let's just say she was having a lot of issues at the time, and when issues start happening at home, they want to suspend your security clearance for a time, because they don't want because of the risk of being compromised.
They actually drag you in for it too. The same exact identical thing happened to me. I have an ex that poisoned me. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
And he was hanging out at the base a lot. He was stalking me at work. And my CEO said, get him out of here. And he banned him from the base. They pissed him off. But I got called in, and you know how they put you in a situation where they watch what you do. It's almost like a test. Okay. And they did a big one to me this time. And I apparently passed it, and I was brought in and he sat me down. The guy looked me dead in the face and said, your security clearance remains. And I went, thanks. What the hell? And the only other thing he had to say to me after that was straighten home out. And it was all happening to me at that time, the debacle of my ex. Yep. And I knew I would lose my security clearance if that didn't get resolved now, because they consider that an outside influence that could cause health.
It could compromise you. Yep. That's right. So, but to answer the question in regards to Egypt, we do find written on the walls there in some of the different locations, like the Hall of Ptah Soker at Abydos, where we find Stargate chambers, all throughout that. But we find that they are using some elements. They are, and actually part of it is the ingestion of monatomic white gold cakes that they're using before they go into the Stargate chambers. There's a lot that they do with energy at these locations. You have every temple in Egypt. When you walk into it from like the main gate and everything and into the temple, you are, if it's not the entire gateway that is constructed in Aswan rose granite, it's at least the threshold of it, so that when you walk in, it's clearing your energy, so that you come into the temple with fresh energies, and you're not bringing all of whatever you had with you. And then as you go into some of the other chambers, there's other alterations to energy as you go through it. So it might not necessarily be element 115, but there's certainly some relationship there of using energies and elements to prepare you for use of the Stargates.
Yeah, it's almost like grounding. It is grounding. You go through different stages of grounding. On a craft, you have to be fully grounded, almost Faraday. I call it Faradaying, but it's mostly you're being Faradayed from the electromagnetic energy that's going to run through you if you're not grounded properly in the craft. Okay. And I actually had grounding pads under my feet that I could not ever lose contact with. And I had one arm rest that I had to lean on as well and never break contact. I only used my left hand, which was good because I'm left-handed. And my hair could not be loose. It had to be braided back, or completely cut short so I wouldn't gather too much energy from even the air around me. I started becoming, how do I put this? I started losing hair all over my body. It was electrolyzing me, and I realized at that point, that's why the Greys are bald. They do this all the time. No damn hair. And they said, yeah, that's right. Because they do on their home world. They just don't, those that work with the craft. And it's amazing. But yeah, those you're describing grounding. You're losing all of the energy that can get you and electrocute you to death, right?
Right.
You have to stop that from happening. And you can get it from anywhere. Just walking, you can gather energy and they want it gone,
Yeah.
To be in that environment.
Absolutely.
So.
All right, let's move to our next question. We don't have a whole lot, but there's a few. This is from Uno Pomelo. Are these
yeah. And usually when I tell the story of
well, here, let me read it.
Yeah, go ahead and read the question for the listeners later.
People, who are just the questions. Are these electromagnetic anomalies largely responsible for the missing 411 cases of sudden inexplicable disappearances, as per David Paulides? Dolly, they want your opinion too. But yeah, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah. Usually when I tell the story of, you're walking down the path and, you step off because you hear that story that I was talking about earlier. Usually I mention David Paulides and Missing 411 because he's done so much work in that area. And that's, kind of what we're talking about, these missing person cases, out in the wilderness, and where do they go? And yeah, a lot of people are never seen again. Some do come back and they have some really, really fascinating tales to tell.
It's fascinating stuff. Yeah.
I'm a little bit more earth scientific about this than I would be, outside of the realm of where I am here. And it would be that I think that they have to do an actual investigation and investigate the family and who was with the person when they disappeared, or if they were on their own, all of that. You have to go through all the steps. You have to, in other words, scientifically, you have to get rid of everything it isn't before you see what it truly is. And I know that somewhere in this country, they've got a bean counter who knows who disappeared from real honest to goodness, woo, and those that were off by their family or did stupid things and disappeared into the earth and were eaten by animals, And my opinion is that it's probably a three-way tie. In other words, I think that there are some that are taken, and leave here, and then some that are off themselves because they do stupid things and wild animals abound, and then there are others that are taken out by their own people.
Yeah, and that's something I always qualify it with is you do. I mean, when it comes to Alaska, it's not unlike other parts of the country where you do have, yes, you always look at the family first, because any time when it comes to like a murder or a kidnapping or something like that, you always look to the family first, because it's usually someone close that's going to do something to them. You do have people that go wandering off into the woods and get eaten by a bear. You might find a leg bone at some point later. You have some people that just want to get away. There was the guy that they found in the school bus up there a few years back, where he just wanted to get away from the world, and he found a school bus to hang out in up there that was abandoned, and he ended up dying there. But then you have others that are just completely unexplained. Alaska's actually put together, they call it the Missing Persons Clearinghouse, because they have so many missing people up there.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I know from reading a lot of books about survival, it's very, very easy to become lost. It can happen quite quickly, and people often panic. If you're ever lost, your best bet is usually just stay put. Don't start wandering around. Give it a chance for people to find you. But yeah, I'm sure there's all kinds of things going on.
Yeah.
All right, I have another question from Foggy Notions podcast, who always brings in really deep questions. This one says, Mike, connecting the universe classes and 30 plus years of research, how might ancient wisdom, shadow entities, and stargates reveal that UAP and paranormal phenomena are all expressions of, I'm assuming, the same interdimensional reality?
Yeah, I mean, they're all, so that's why I call my platform the Connecting Universe, because it's all connected. So it's, we have people who are just, about UFO research. We have some people that are just about cryptid research. We have some people that are just paranormal investigators. And, to me, it is, really a part of the all, it's part of the same interdimensional reality that, we're talking about really very, very interconnected phenomena that are occurring for very similar reasons. That it kind of goes back to that quote that I was talking about from Mark Anthony before, is that many different species using a similar energetic modality to enter into our world. And so, yeah, it might be what we call a ghost. It might be a Sasquatch. It might be an extraterrestrial, but they're all using similar properties to be able to enter into our world. And they might have all different agendas and things like that, but there's still some similar components between each one.
Yeah, that's kind of the theory I've landed on. I don't think they're all the same thing.
No.
There's absolutely some bleed throughs and some incredible commonalities between a lot of these things. Absolutely. But I hesitate to say that, Bigfoot and ghosts and UFOs and aliens and all of this is manifestations of one intelligence that's expressing differently, only in terms of maybe source, the entire universe.
Right. Yeah. The entire, there is a source to all of that. And then, what's beyond the universe, that sort of thing. Yeah.
All right. That was a good question. All right. Now, I'm not sure you can answer this one. This is someone's personal experience, but no questions are off limits. That's kind of the role on our show. This is from Nick. When I was a child, I had bright green orbs visiting me. They whistled when they came. I was like 13 or 12, 1990. After that, I had big-eyed beings telling me compassion over and over. And his question is, who were those green orbs with long orange tails? Only you could answer that, Nick, ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say precisely what they were. I mean, it's a fascinating experience. If they are still around, you could try communicating to find out, a little bit more specific information about them.
3 questions. Who are you?
Yeah, there's Dolly's 3 questions. Yeah.
And what are you doing? Always do the 3 questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would always just recommend writing it down in detail, really doing your own research and trying to figure it out, because looking outside of yourself for answers is all well and good, but ultimately the answers are going to come from within you. You would know best what happened to you. It's kind of my point. Okay, let's see. We got time for a couple more, I think. Here is another from Foggy Notions podcast. Thank you, Foggy Notions. Rick, you've researched Alaska's mysterious triangle with vortices and disappearances. How do these natural portals connect to your broader ideas on consciousness, the astral plane, and the simulation? The simulation.
Yeah, the simulation. There we go. Yeah, I mean, it's all again part of the, connected to the greater universe. Consciousness. Well, and this goes to when we talk about different dimensions, we are multidimensional beings. So our consciousness is here on the fourth dimension that we call time, but it's inside this third dimensional body.
Right.
When the body passes, the consciousness still exists and can go and travel. So yeah, it's all connected. The things like the vortices and all that, I mean, that's an energy manifestation. That energy manifestation can be used, if you can learn how to harness it, can be used to enter in some of these different dimensions and travel to different locations and things like that. So it's all related. It's all connected to each other.
Yeah. I would like to make a point to anybody who's listening, because we're going through a time period now where there's going to be a lot of electromagnetic anomalies happening. Okay. And you're going to think they're portals. Do not go into them. Do not. Okay?
If you do, leave a note and let people know that you're told.
Did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you ain't coming
Bring your
back.
cell phone at least.
That's a question I get a lot. If like a portal suddenly opened up in front of me, would I go through? And my answer is yes, but I'm leaving a note.
Yeah, you'll survive it, but your body will not. It will take you out. So, all right.
All right. There's just a couple more questions. I'm going to pop through them real quickly. This one's actually from me. What is your opinion of Chris Bledsoe's healing claims? I think they're legit. I tracked one. The gentleman asked for a healing from Chris Bledsoe for his grandfather who had cancer, and according to him, he got cured. And I do know many contactees do have healing abilities. It's pretty well authenticated and a big part of ET contact. I don't know what you think, Mike, of Chris Bledsoe and his whole story.
I haven't found a reason yet to doubt him. Other than just kind of a general, people question, is this real or is this not? But for Chris specifically, I haven't found a reason yet.
He was healed of Crohn's disease. It's absolutely well verified. It was a chronic condition and very much authenticated. So, all right, one last one. Are lucid dreams OBEs? I want to say yes.
I think they can be, and that's always kind of a fuzzy area, right? Because I mean, to me, some dreams are just dreams. Like I've had some very lucid dreams of of I don't know, like being on stage with Motley Crue, and that hasn't happened,
No.
Sorry. It's fun. It's a lot of fun, but yeah, some I believe are out of body of experiences, or even out of time experiences, where you are traveling to different places, locations, points in time, and having that experience, and you bring it back with you. And I've had a number of those where you might call them a premonition or something like that, and where I have gone to another point in time, witnessed it, came back, and it might have been a week, a month, a year later, or whatever. And
I did that to Preston. We OBE together, and I took him back and showed him dinosaurs. And I showed him the Kuiper Belt and some other stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun.
I think we all go OBE every night, honestly. It's really a matter of remembering it.
It would be the point of hanging around a body that's shutting down and powered down and doing absolutely nothing. You're going to go have fun. We are not constrained. Our consciousness is not constrained by any means. And we can go anywhere and do anything we want to. So.
All right. Well, we're going to have to call it a night here. Let me just pop up your books real quick to remind everyone of all these amazing books you have. Where can people find these? Here's A Walk in the Shadows.
Yeah, well, you can go to my website, MikeRicksecker.com. You'll find all the books there. Of course, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, those places as well. You can, really just go to my website, because you'll find the links to everything there. The podcast, Connecting the Universe, my YouTube channel, which is at Mike Ricksecker, all my social media. Of course, there's Connected Universe Portal as well. So, yeah, Shadow Dimension's playing on Tubi TV, Roku channel. I'm working on a couple more films right now. Follow up to Shadow Dimension, and actually, my Stargates film will be out before that one. So that's in the works as well. So, in any of the tours and events, you can find that on the website. So, if you're interested in the Stargates tour, which we are going back next March 21st through April 2nd. So yeah, we're gonna start that on the spring equinox.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. Very cool. Well,
Okay.
we're going to have you back on again because
Absolutely.
we hardly touched a lot of your ghost stuff here. It's like, man, oh man, you've done a lot of research. Look at all these books.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very cool.
15 to date and still going.
And here's your podcast, Connecting the Universe. Is that right?
Yes, Connecting the Universe.
Watch that. Yes. Yeah.
Well, very cool. Thanks for coming on to the show. Do you have any last words for our audience?
I guess final words. People always ask. Well, it's people always ask me. What is it? We're supposed to do here, and here on this existence. And I always thought, well, two things. I think our main purposes. One, love each other, help your fellow people, and two, all this knowledge that we're gaining, pass that on to the next generation. It doesn't do any good to hold it on, for yourself. Pass that on to the next generation and help them get to the next. We talked earlier about, being a stepping stone for the next generation, just like the ones that came before us were ours. Just keep doing that. Pass that knowledge on. Very cool. All right. Well, thanks again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight on the Lightgate. Thank you, Namaste, Gizmo. You guys supporting us. It means a lot, Sonny Burnett. But yeah, thank you all for just tuning in. We love you very much. And we hope to see you next week on the Lightgate. We have another guest lined up. All right, Dolly, I guess it's time to take us out.
Right. Thank you all for joining us on the Lightgate. Mike, please hang on for a minute after we close. We're coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast. We're on Facebook, we're on Roku, we're on Rumble, and we're on YouTube. Everybody go forth, love one another, and know all that is noble, and as Mike says, pass it on. Right now.